Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to be reacting to this because as an American, I thought this was quite captivating. Is the EU creating an alternative to NATO? Obviously, the implication being no America. TLDR News, EU. Check them out, link down below. These guys are awesome. I think they put out a new video every day dealing with stuff out of the EU, and it's really good stuff. I mean, it actually feels unbiased, you know, like a lot of news, any news you watch, it's like, it just feels biased. I'm not being paid by these people or anything. I just think they're really great. So check them out. Let's do it.
Earlier this week, Canada announced that it had signed a defence and security partnership with the EU, just over a month after the UK signed its
So Canada's in and we're not in, huh?
defence pact with the bloc. But Canada and the UK were only the latest of a series of countries to have signed defence deals with the EU since 2024. Moldova, Norway, Japan, South Korea, Albania, and North Macedonia all have signed bespoke partnerships with the EU in the last 13 months.
I did not realize that.
And this month, Australia and the Philippines also agreed to start talks on defence and
I also didn't realize Norway's not in the EU.
security with the EU. Philippines also agreed to start talks on defence and security with the EU.
That's a pretty amazing network right there. That's like half the world.
This is all happening amid conversations about the future of NATO, the West's foremost military alliance, given US President Donald Trump's fluctuating stance on its Article 5 mutual defense clause. Having said at this week's NATO summit that the US is both with them all the way, but also that the US's commitment to Article 5 depends on your definition. So in this video, we'll take a look at the EU's historic defense.
Such a stupid thing to say because the whole, I mean, any agreement like that is based on faith and trust at the end of the day. You know, that's ultimately what it's based on. So once you undermine that, it's really hard to get that back. You know what I mean? Because NATO, all the NATO countries need to trust 100%, okay, America's going to come to the defense, right? Being that America has the biggest military.
Policy. Its
strongest military.
Network of defense pacts, and whether it
and once you undermine that, it's like, okay, I guess we need a plan B.
could conceivably be creating an alternative to NATO. Explore which world leaders are winning and which are losing every week with our podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard. Find it on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favourite
Interesting. That sounds fun.
podcast app. Let's start by outlining the EU's historic defence policy. For decades, from the establishment of NATO in 1949 until the 1992 Maastricht Treaty, which introduced the EU's common foreign and security policy, including, quote, the eventual framing of a common defence policy, which might in time lead to a common defence, the EU's defence policy was wholly integrated into the transatlantic security framework of NATO. This was because, after the Second World War and throughout the Cold War, European security against the Soviet Union could only be guaranteed by the US. NATO's Article 5 collective defense clause ensured that an attack against one member would be considered an attack against all. And while this American security guarantee has underpinned Europe's defense for decades, it simultaneously prevented the EU from establishing more efficient internal structures for things like pooling and sharing military resources, buying arms, and operational coordination. For instance, under the EU's 2002 Berlin...
Man, yeah, it's just so bizarre to me. I mean, I understand how that, from Trump's point of view, since to Trump everything is just a negotiation and a deal, he views it as just like, oh, here's my playing cards I get to play with. Oh, yeah, we underpin NATO. Okay, well, I can use that to get some more money or whatever, you know? But it's like, okay, you need to realize exactly what you're playing with, man. Because you bend it a little too much, it's going to break. You know, that's pretty scary.
Plus agreement, intended to improve the EU's access to NATO planning capabilities and avoid the duplication of NATO structures. Any use of NATO assets by the EU requires unanimity among NATO member states, giving non-EU countries like the US or Turkey huge veto power. This again highlights the EU's dependence on NATO, subordinating the EU's strategic interests to those of the US. Anyway, this conundrum has become more apparent over the past decade, as Europe's defense has faced several challenges, including Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, the UK's exit from the EU, and 2 Trump presidencies in the US.
Why was the annexation of Crimea? Maybe that was like huge news in Europe. I don't know. But over here in America, I mean, I have a really bad memory, but I don't remember seeing any headlines about that. And I do check world headlines. Certainly it would have been in the world headlines. It just, I mean, a lot of people, I feel like, don't even know that that happened in 2014, at least here in America.
Defense has faced several challenges, including Russia.
Like, why was Crimea just given up so easily, I guess, is what I wonder.
Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, the UK's exit from the EU, and 2 Trump presidencies in the US. So in March 2022, just a few weeks after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the EU adopted its Strategic Compass, a rapidly assembled action plan to strengthen the EU's defence by 2030 and make it capable of acting decisively. This included an agreement to develop more tailored bilateral partnerships with like-minded countries and strategic partners, such as the US, Canada, Norway, the UK, Japan, and others, leading to a series of new defence and security partnerships with non-EU countries. So in May 2024, the EU signed its first 2 bilateral security partnerships, with Moldova, an EU candidate country since June 2022 that's been subject to Russian hybrid warfare, including cyber attacks and election interference, and Norway, a NATO member and the closest partner to the EU under the European Economic Area, whose defence pact focused on maritime security and protecting undersea infrastructure. Also, in November 2020.
So, like, why Moldova? I mean, I get he said that, but I'm just curious what Moldova's military looks like. So, in 2022, Moldova spent 0.32% of GDP on defense, and they have 5,000 active personnel. So, not a big military at all.
Also, in November 2024, the EU signed defence deals with the Balkan countries of Albania and North Macedonia, which have aligned more closely with the EU against Russia. Beyond that, though, the EU has also signed defence pacts with non-European countries, including Japan and South Korea in November, which face rising threats from China, Russia, and North Korea, as well as the UK this May, which has aligned with the EU since changing government in 2024. And most recently with Canada, which Trump threatened to annex as the US's 51st state.
What a crazy thing. That's kind of been put on the back burner. How crazy is it that crazy of an idea is like just at the end of the list of things that Trump's come up with? It's like, oh yeah, he wanted Canada as the 51st state. And then there's Greenland too. Crazy year, 2025.
Talks are also underway with Australia and the Philippines, 2 nations in the Indo-Pacific concerned about China's military buildup. But why is the EU actually pursuing these deals? And could the EU's network of military alliances actually work as a NATO alternative? On the first question, there are at least 3 reasons why the EU is currently expanding its network of defence pacts. First is Trump's erratic foreign policy and hostile attitude towards NATO. Since becoming president, Trump has threatened NATO allies Canada and Greenland with military action, taken an ambivalent or even pro-Russian stance on Ukraine, and repeatedly sparked alarm in Europe by suggesting that the US's commitment to NATO is conditional on defense spending, with NATO members this week agreeing to massively increase their annual defense spending to 5% of GDP, as demanded by Trump. Some analysts are now recommending that the EU prepare for the worst.
It's kind of ironic, that whole situation to me. It's like Trump is he's kind of encouraging Europe to do exactly what now Europe wants to do because of Trump. Am I making sense? Become more independent from the United States by increasing their military spending to where, I mean, it's going to take a long time, but in some number of years, it could be like, okay, we really don't need America's help anymore. And at that point, is that good for America? Obviously not, as far as America being a world superpower.
case scenario, a US withdrawal from NATO, which is why the EU is now taking steps to increase its independence from NATO, both through more external defence pacts and improving its own continental defence industry. For instance, the EU recently announced an ambitious €150 billion Security Action for Europe instrument, including funds for common procurement projects, and is also working on the European Industrial Defence Programme, aimed at integrating supply chains, facilitating cross-border cooperation, and increasing defence manufacturing capability. But any European-led NATO alternative would require years or even decades to build up the structures and operational capacities of NATO. So EU members will want to keep the US firmly on side for...
So it's like maybe during the Trump presidency, it'll all be fine. It'll all be fine. But then the ramifications of what he's doing might ripple on for decades.
as long as...
And I don't know if it will be good for the United States. Guess it depends how it all plays out.
Possible. Anyway, the second reason for this network of defense pacts is Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, which has brought the military threat right to Europe's doorstep. Germany's defense chief Carsten Breuer and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky have both recently suggested that Russia could attack NATO within 5 years, and the EU...
That would be fucking crazy, huh?
...definitely wouldn't want to see the US's commitment to Article 5 tested in this way. As such, its defence pacts with non-EU countries like Canada, Norway and the UK give the EU more options for procurement in the event of a conflict. The third reason is broader geopolitical shifts. The world looks totally different.
I mean, every time they say, oh, Russia might attack within 5 years, it always makes me think, would that be intentional, like during the Trump presidency?
Now compared to after World War II when NATO was found, with a multipolar order marked by military...
That just seems crazy, I mean, presumably the generals obviously have way more intel than I do. But Russia attacking NATO, even if it is obviously a little bit strained right now thanks to Trump, but while at full-scale war with Ukraine, and they're struggling with that, it just seems crazy that they would do that.
Superpowers like Russia, China and the US, and new hybrid warfare tactics including cyber threats, disinformation, maritime attacks,
and God, I just hope if they ever had the nerve to do that, please, I mean, Trump, please don't hold back, you know what I mean? Like, I freaking hate Trump, man. But please, under that scenario, I would like to believe he would just help stomp Russia.
Even space vulnerabilities.
Hopefully we don't have to find out.
The EU's defence pacts with Japan, South Korea, the UK and Canada aim to tackle these issues and uphold global stability, which again was a role previously played by NATO. However, whether this network of security and defence partnerships could actually work as a NATO alternative is a tricky question. In its 2022 strategic compass, the EU stated...
It clearly seems like that's the path that you guys are taking, right? Like you're trying to make a plan B to NATO. NATO is not fully trustworthy right now as far as like sticking to the agreement. Like you can't just have that, you know what I mean? Especially with Russia the way it is. You can't just have that. You have to have a plan B.
That a stronger and more defence-capable EU would be complementary to NATO, and argued that a stronger EU and a stronger NATO are mutually reinforcing. But in recent months, the EU seems to have pivoted away from this idea towards more active efforts to improve its own collective defence, previously guaranteed by NATO. To this end, we're also seeing more coordinated defence efforts from the E3 group of France, Germany and the UK, which could potentially...
Why have I never heard of that? The E3 group. France, Germany, UK. Okay. I'm writing that down just because I never heard of that. Is that an official thing? E3? E3 group. All right, sorry.
Potentially drive a European-led NATO if required in the future. Now, when talking about topics like these, it's important to be precise, and precision is also crucial to our sponsor this week, Henson Shaving. Henson's AL13 razor, which they produce at their...
Not where I thought they were going.
aerospace machine shop perfectly holds blades at a 30-degree angle and extends them only 0.0013 inches, less than the width of a human hair.
Wow. Go check out their link for that right here. Would you like to join our new organization? I really don't know. It's without the US. I'm in. Pretty much, huh? For Trump, Article 5 definition is, we get to invoke it as we did the first time in NATO history after 9/11, but we do not comply with it if another NATO country invokes it. Yeah, that would be an absolute disgrace. An absolute disgrace. And the fact that Trump is even suggesting that or putting that idea out there, I think is extremely damaging to our credibility, which is very annoying to me as an American. I'm very disgusted by that. Because I hope to God it's all some stupid negotiation tactic. And that, you know, in the event of it actually happening, America would come through. But I hate that it's been undermined like that. I just hate that. We used you for our own ends and would like to continue to do so, but don't expect us to help you in any way, America. See what I mean? I can't blame people for getting that impression because that's the impression Trump gave off. Ugh, god damn. Very interesting video, very good information. Check out TLDR News EU, link down below. And thank you for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.